Right, so today we are going to be doing completing the square from section 3.5. This is going to build on section 3.3, factoring perfect square trinomials. Okay? So if you look at this trinomial, x squared plus 6x minus 27 equals 0. Okay, so it's also a quadratic is what it's called, and that's what I was about to call it a minute ago. You can, if we try to factor this, it is not factorable. Okay, so there's a couple of different ways we can do this. One way is completing the square. Okay, and I really like completing the square. I think it's easier than the quadratic formula, which is what we're going to review next. But some people don't like it. There are some times when you're going to have to complete the square, so you need to make sure you understand this. Okay, so the very first thing we're going to do, our steps to solve in completing the square, is we're going to move the constant to the other side. So I'm just going to rewrite this plus 6x, and I'm moving the constant negative 27 to the other side, so it's positive 27. And my next thing is I'm going to add a blank to both equations. So I'm going to say x squared plus 6x plus blank equals 27 plus blank. Okay. To determine what goes in the blank, we're actually going to create a perfect square trinomial here. Okay, so in order to do that, we need a number that adds to this and multiplies to this that's the same number. So to get that, we're going to do 6 divided by 2, we get 3, and when we square that, we get 9. Okay, so that is our number that's going to go right here. And when we're making perfect square trinomials, we're actually making a perfect square, and let me show you what that means. So here, if this is an x squared block, so it's an x times an x, which gives me an x squared, okay, and I have 6 positive blocks here, so I'm going to put 3 of them up here. I'm going to make this as close to a square as possible. So there's 1x, 2x, 3x, and down here, if I have 4, 5, and 6 x's, so another x, and another x. So there I have x plus 3, okay? And here I have x plus 3, but I have all this blank space there. I cannot have that blank space. Okay, that's where my constants go. So these are my x blocks, and this is my x squared block, and these would be my constants. So in order to make this a perfect cube or a perfect square, I guess it's not three-dimensional, a perfect square like this, okay, and fill in all that space, I have to have those 9 blocks there. Otherwise, I can't write it as x plus 3 times x plus 3. So when we talk about perfect square trinomials or completing the square, that's really what we're doing. So when we're completing the square, we're adding these 9 extra blocks to make this a perfect square so that we can factor it. Okay, so let's go on ahead and finish solving this. So now we know this is a perfect square trinomial. Now you can factor this the normal way, a times c, find your factors, and do it. But here's a shortcut. This right here is going to go what's going to go in this blank there. Okay? And then you just write it as squared. Okay? That's it. So when you're factoring perfect square trinomials, whatever's in that blank there, okay, whatever you get when you divide that b by 2, that goes right there. Okay, now I'm going to set it equal, and I'm going to go on ahead and do this side. 27 plus 9 is 36. Okay, now I need to solve this, because remember, I'm solving this. I need to find the values for x. So I'm going to take the square root of both sides, and I get x plus 3 equals positive or negative 6. Anytime I take the square root of something, I have to make it plus or minus, which means I have to now set this equal to positive 6 and equal to negative 6. Okay. So I'm going to subtract 3 from both sides, and I get x equals 3. Subtract 3 from both sides, and I get x equals negative 9. So if I plug either of those values in for x here, I'm going to get 0. Okay. Let's take a look at a couple more. So this next one says x squared minus 12x equals negative 20. So the constant is already on the other side. I'm going to add my blanks. So minus 12x plus a blank equals negative 20 plus a blank. Okay, so now I'm going to take this value, negative 12, divided by 2, and I get negative 6. Square that, and I get 36. And that's what I'm going to add to each blank. All right, so now let's go on ahead and rewrite this. So this is x minus 6, because that's what I got when I divided by 2. That's what goes in there. Squared equals negative 20 plus 36 is 16. To solve it, I'm going to take the square root of both sides. Remember, when you're solving, you're doing PEMDAS backwards. Okay, so you need to get rid of any addition or subtraction, not in parentheses. Then you need to get rid of any multiplication or division, not in parentheses. Then you get rid of exponents, and very last, you get rid of anything inside the parentheses. Okay, so now we're going to have x minus 6 equals plus or minus 4. And if you don't put that plus or minus, you are going to lose points big time. So make sure that you are remembering to always put those pluses and minuses when you take the square root of something. Okay, so we're going to add 6 to both sides, and we get x equals 10. Add 6 to both sides, and we get x equals 2. Okay, so those are our two values for x that would make this equation true. Okay. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the next one. Okay. Actually, why don't you guys try this one on your own? Pause the video, try this one, and then come back and see if you get the same thing I got. Okay, so hopefully you guys have tried this. So the first thing I'm going to do, x squared minus 8x plus a blank equals negative 7 plus a blank. Okay, I'm going to take this number divided by 2. I get negative 4 squared is 16. Okay, so I'm going to add 16 to both sides. Okay. And now I'm going to rewrite this. So x minus 4 squared equals negative 7 plus 16 is 9. Square root of both sides. And I get x minus 4 equals plus or minus 3. Okay, I'm not done yet. I have to actually solve this. Okay, so now I'm going to set x minus 4 equal to positive 3 and x minus 4 equal to negative 3 and solve both of those. So I'm going to add 4 to both sides. X equals 7. Add 4 to both sides. X equals 1. Okay, so the very last one we're going to do together because it's a little bit different. The difference here is this number right there. It's got a 2 in front of it. Okay, so now I'm going to have to change it so that there's no 2 there. The only way we can do these problems is if there's not a value with the x squared other than 1. So the coefficient with x squared has to be 1. So we're going to divide every term by 2. And we get x squared plus 4x. I'm going to go on ahead and add my blanks in here as I do this, okay, because that would be our next step. Okay, now I'm going to take my 4 and divide it by 2, and I get 2 squared, which is 4. I always put parentheses around these, or I have been, because in this case right here, if you're plugging it into your calculator and you don't have parentheses around that negative 6, then this is what it's going to do. It's thinking that it's a negative 1 times 6 squared, so it's going to take negative 1 times 6 squared, which is 36, and give you negative 36, when really we want negative 6 times negative 6, which is positive 36. Okay, so it's really important to distinguish between those two things. Okay, all right, so back to this one now. Okay, so now 2 squared is 4, okay, and I'm going to add that to both blanks. Okay, now I'm going to say, okay, well, x squared, oh, not x squared, x plus 2 squared. Okay, so this just goes in there, equals 6 plus 4, which is 10. All right, let's go on ahead and factor these things. Okay, so it's going to be x plus 2 equals plus or minus the square root of 10. Okay, well, let's see if we can break this down. So 10 breaks down to 2 times 5. So I can't simplify this 10 or the square root of 10 any more than it already is. So I'm going to leave it just like that. I'm going to subtract 2 from both sides, and my final answer then will be x equals negative 2 plus or minus the square root of 10. Okay? Do not change it to a decimal. That will not be exact form. We want exact form here, which is always going to be radicals. All right, going ahead and if you have an assignment for today, do this one. And then if you don't have an assignment and we've combined 3.6, then you need to watch the 3.6 notes.